So I just want to give you a little bit of information about a couple of skills that you might find useful. I think you will find concreteness is useful fairly regularly. Immediacy is going to be less frequently used. So we'll start by talking about the situation where you might need concreteness. And this is where your service user might be being a bit vague. So that's your problem. You've got a service user who is talking in pretty abstract terms and using vague words like always, everything, everybody, all the time, they, it, sometimes. Just to give you an example here, so they might be saying, if you'd ask someone to open up a consultation and tell you what's been happening, it's been really difficult. Don't know what to do about it. I never thought it would happen to me. You always think it would happen to someone else. They made it very difficult. So if you just paraphrase this information, you're going to still come back with lots of vague terms because you haven't got the specifics. So you might be saying you had a very difficult time. It's something that you never thought would happen to you. But we still don't know what's it. Who are they? How often is regularly? So there's lots of lack of clarity in that situation. And if you've got information like that and you're starting to try and make some goals, for example, or come up with some problem solving or solution, you can't do that because you don't actually know what the problem is. So you're going to end up with vague solutions. And that's not going to lead to effective action or effective behaviour change, which of course is what we were looking for. So having a very vague service user can be quite problematic. So we need to act on that. So the skill of concreteness is a possible solution for dealing with your vague client or service user. So we're trying to make our conversation more concrete. And I think this word's quite helpful in a way because concrete is something hard and firm. And I think that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get more clarity in our conversation. So why do we need to do that? Because we need to have clarity in what the service user is saying to us, because otherwise what we're tempted to do is to put our own ideas or our own experiences into the situation or what we might do in that situation. The other thing is that we might then set goals that aren't going to be realistic. So if we are concrete, that helps us not to put our own assumptions, our ideas, experiences into the situation, and it means our goals are much more likely to be realistic. So how do we go about this, making things more concrete? And we can actually apply it to all of the skills that we use. We can direct it to comments that the service user has made about relating to their behaviour, their thoughts, their feelings. But also we might need it when we're trying to do a typical day or a day history, because we're trying to find out more information about eating behaviour, such as frequency and amounts. So, not very often, or no, I never have that, or I don't have a very big portion, are all really vague statements that are really unhelpful if we're trying to have an accurate assessment. So the idea of being concrete or having concreteness is it's something called a compound skill because we can apply it to lots of different things that we do. So we can use our listening skills, encouraging our questions, our paraphrases, all to add up to make the conversation more concrete and less vague. So whereas we ask open questions, so we've got the what and the how, we are trying to frame it a little bit more so that we're getting a little bit more clarity. What happened exactly? What's been difficult for you? What did you do next? Could you tell me who you mean by they? Can you give me an example of that? How did you feel about that? Tell me what it actually does. And with the diet history or typical day, when you say regularly, can you tell me how many times a week that might be, for example? So you're trying to frame a question that is going to hone in and get a little bit more clarity, but it still remains an open question. It's not a yes/no answer, but needing to try and get a bit more specific. So if you can do that, you will be able to get greater clarity in your conversation and your history of your service user, but also hopefully in relation to a typical day and assessment details, what their symptoms are, all of those things. It will all become a lot clearer, and that's going to be better for you and for the service user. So that's a skill I would expect that you will use fairly regularly, and I would be surprised if you've not experienced clients who are a bit vague on your placements. So the other skill I just wanted to mention to you is not something I expect you to use regularly. But there are going to be times in your career when someone will challenge you in some way or suggest something that you can't deliver for some reason or another. So they might be asking you to go beyond your scope of practice or to do something else that would be unprofessional, to go out with them, to meet up with them somewhere. That, you know, there's kind of lots of different things that could be happening. And if they've just said, you know, given you something you need to think of, you know, well, could you take me shopping? It'd be really nice if we could meet up outside of here and you could take me shopping and help me to see what foods I could find. Clearly way beyond the boundaries of your professional behaviour. So if you just reflect that back or paraphrase it, it could seem as if you are agreeing with them in that situation. So it might be that you're saying, you'd like me to take you shopping, and so you can see the foods and we can choose together, you know, what would be good for you. And they go, yes. You go, no, that's not going to happen. So we have to think about how we word these situations and how we deal with those. So it doesn't happen very often, but it can happen. And it could be for a number of reasons. So it could be that the service user is interested in your personal life. So they might be talking about a situation that's relevant to them, but then saying, well, yeah, but are you married? Do you have children? What would you do in this situation? So they might ask about you, details about your personal life that you don't necessarily want to give. They might be asking about how you feel. I mean, don't you think you'd feel the same in this situation? So what your emotional reaction to their situation is. It could be they are dissatisfied with you as a helper, or that they are dissatisfied with the service, or that they're expecting you to take sides. So it could be you've got a couple in front of you, or a parent and a teenager, and you know the parent's saying, you know, have you got a teenage child? Don't you think you should do this? So they're trying to draw you into something that isn't the right way for you to go and isn't going to be a helpful thing for them either for you to do. So we have to acknowledge these situations and deal with them fairly face on, really. So the idea of immediacy is a 4-stage process. And the first thing to do is to clarify that you've understood correctly. And you can simply use a paraphrase to do that. So you're basically checking that you have heard correctly. And quite often, if you do that, the person who you are paraphrasing will realise that what they've asked is not okay, and will perhaps backtrack a little. But if they genuinely say, yes, I do want to know how you would feel about this if you were in this situation, or yes, I do want you to take sides in this argument, for example. So they're emphasizing that is precisely what they wanted you to do, then you're going to have a different approach. So start with a paraphrase, and then we move on to something called a meta conversation. And what that is it's kind of stopping the conversation that you are having and taking a conversation kind of on the side. So it's a sidestep in a way. So Once you've paraphrased and checked, yes, they are actually asking you to do something you're not willing to do or shouldn't be doing, you might be saying, could I just stop you there for a moment and just talk about this? And then, for example, you are asking me to take sides in this conversation and to ask you what I might do in that situation. However, my role, this explanation, my role is to do this and not to get involved in and to take sides in this particular conversation. You need to explain what your role is and what it isn't. So if they want you to take them shopping, your role is to work with them, collaborative language, so we can look at your diet together, we can work out some appropriate goals to help you towards your aim of treatment. So you can talk about what you can do in your role, but also what you can't. So you're making it really clear by your explanation that this is what you can do, this is what you can't. And that conversation on the side is that checking out that could I explain what I mean, and then ask them what they think, if that explanation is acceptable. So most often you'll get the kind of, oh, I'm really sorry, I didn't realise I was asking you to do something you're not allowed to. That's fine. And most people will be absolutely fine by that. But occasionally, and it is very rare, so not something to be worrying about, it's very rare, someone will need a bit more explanation until they get it, that you actually cannot and will not do what they are asking you to do. So you've checked what they had said and got your understanding correct. You stop the conversation and you have this meta conversation, which includes an explanation using collaborative language of what you will and we can or we cannot do, and then check that explanation is acceptable. If it is, what you then do is say, give a summary of where you've got up to in the consultation. So what you're doing, you've had your meta conversation on the side, and then you're going back to your consultation. And if you summarize where we're up to, so we had explained what diabetes is and how it links to your diet, and the changes, and we discussed this. Is it all right if we now go back to just taking this a bit further? So you are summarising where the consultation had got to and taking it back so that you can pick up where you left off before you had this meta conversation on the side. So you're not going to need that very often, but it is just a useful skill to be aware of, and I hope you don't need to use it too often.